Levenson's article really gives us a great perspective on how important the Old Testament is for our understanding of our Christianity, as well as Judaism and Islam. The focus of this article is Genesis 22, 1-19, which deals with the sacrifice of Isaac. Levenson shows us that Judaism and the Akedah, which refers to the Passover and Rosh Hashanah, really addresses the importance of the actions of Abraham and how they were considered to be obedient and sacrificial, and how this leads us to the Passover, which is that God provided a sacrifice, a way of avoiding the firstborn children of being killed in Egypt, as well as the ram in the place of Isaac. We also see how Isaac is an archetype and a symbol for the role of Jesus as our sacrificial lamb and our salvation. Abraham is an example of obedience, faith, and love of God, which transcends his self-interest and is crucial in our understanding of who Christ is and does the will of his Father. The philosopher Immanuel Kant sees Abraham as unethical, immoral, and a religious fanatic. He addresses this by saying that the Torah prohibits child sacrifice and that God would not ask Abraham to go against the law. Also, Islamic religion also does not condone such actions. Levenson discusses Abraham in the sense of "here I am" to God's call. That "here I am" is really an expression of being ready, attentive, and responsive to God's call. God calls Abraham to go, to leave his land, his kin group, and take his only/favored son and offer him to God as a burnt offering. Abraham loved Isaac more than he loved himself, and this was a deep act of self-sacrifice. Levenson questions what Abraham may have been thinking and whether there was an issue of trust or that God might provide another way so that his son would not die, because Isaac was the promise of Abraham to be the father of many nations. Levenson identifies this sacrifice was a token of love, a gift offering, as was different than an offering that was sacrificial for the remittance of guilt and sin. Adonai Yireh, the Lord sees or will see. Isaac is aware that they are going to make a sacrifice. His question is, where is the lamb? Abraham says God will provide the sheep for the burnt offering. Levenson makes connections to the Passover and the Paschal lamb. The firstborn males belong to God and must be rightfully offered back to God. Levenson makes the connection between the redemption of the Israelites' firstborn son in Egypt and how God provided the ram for Isaac so that Abraham did not slay him. This article addresses Abraham's obedience. Certainly, there must have been something going through his mind about what about the promised nation, the descendants of Isaac? What did Abraham believe would happen? He put his faith in the Lord. What exactly does that mean? Did he not question God? Who else might have been obedient? Hinting towards Isaac being a little older. So what role did Isaac play? Levenson says he walked alongside of his father. He carried the firewood. Did he allow himself to be bound? It seems so. Views vary on Isaac's age. Perhaps he was able to agree with his father's decision. Following the will of the Father mimics Jesus doing the will of his Father. Levenson identifies a parallel in that the angel messenger announces to Hagar, God heard Ishmael's cry. God would rescue Ishmael. The angel speaks to Abraham, do not kill your son. God provides the ram. The angel tells Abraham that God has learned that Abraham reveres him. This indicates a test of loyalty to God, worshiping God alone with heart and soul. So God keeps his promises, his covenant, his oaths. Abraham was to be the father of many nations, have many descendants through Isaac. God did not learn that Abraham was faithful. God was teaching Abraham that God was faithful and provided Abraham an opportunity to trust him completely. Faith within a covenantal framework is not trusting in a promise. It's proving faithful to God in covenant by obeying his commands. Adonai Yireh, God will make a way when there seems to be no way. God reaffirms his initial promise to make Abraham the father of many nations. So Abraham rose above self-interest. Was there anything that Abraham did to merit grace or favor? Certainly the Jewish people believe that they're an undeserving people, and the benefit has been the grace that was distributed through Abraham. Was Abraham vindicated by his faith? And are we ever worthy of the promise of God? Levenson discusses the transition to the second patriarchal generation. Abraham arranges for Isaac to marry Rebekah. In the Jewish faith, there is a transition from sacrifice to prayer, the service of the heart. Abraham had suppressed his compassion for his son, and in turn, God would show mercy instead of anger, fulfilling the covenant promises to the Jewish people. Abraham's prayer had become the prayer of the entire Jewish community. We see that people are living into the belief that God will spare, God will provide another way. Levenson introduces us to the idea of interlacing of Akedah and Passover. Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac is a mirror image of Israelites' redemption from Egypt. Both situations, there was a sheep that was substituted as a sacrifice for the firstborn son. The intent is equivalent of the deed, saying that Abraham, although he didn't spill blood, his intent was to sacrifice. The call on mercy of God and the confession of sin and the resolve to do better is what the Jewish people do every time they recognize the significant event. The Jewish people remind God of his irrevocable covenant. The blowing of the ram's horn is a reminder of Abraham's obedience and, moreover, God's merciful intervention on Mount Moriah. Levenson addresses the idea of not only was Isaac a typology of foreshadowing of Christ, but that Jesus actually supersedes Isaac. Through Jesus, the blessings of Abraham are available to the Gentiles. Jesus is referred to as the Paschal Lamb in the New Testament. Jesus becomes the new Isaac, and therefore God becomes the new Abraham. Jesus suffered and therefore was the true sacrifice. Isaac as a symbol, Christ as the reality. Using the framework of Christology to look at the Old Testament, we unlock the meaning of equidah. Through the Old Testament scriptures, we understand who Christ was. Through Jesus, we have a deeper understanding of the meaning of the Old Testament. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity have the same roots, and they all have a story regarding Abraham and the sacrifice of Isaac. Abraham is a central figure for the Jewish faith. Christianity is based in the Old Testament, and we appreciate the richness of God's redemption through the Scriptures. All three faiths are monotheistic, and there's a great deal of archetypes, prophets, and character of God and humans that is developed through these stories. This article left me with several thoughts and questions in my mind, such as, how do you reconcile God asking Abraham to sacrifice his son, which was not permitted under the Torah? Another thing was, do you think that Isaac was a willing participant in the sacrifice? Was he indeed an adult? Thirdly, what is your perception of the Quran and the version of the sacrificing of Isaac? What new insights have you had from reading more about the Jewish history and practices around Aquidah, Passover, and Jubilee? I found that it's been fascinating to learn about the nuances and a little bit more about the Jewish faith and how it informs our own faith as Christians. Levenson has inspired me to want to dive deeper into the Old Testament, to learn more about our faith and the heritage that comes from our brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith.